At that time, the Roman government was in the hands of three triumvirs, one Julius Caesar, the second Pompey and the third Crassus. By defeating the Gauls, Caesar and Pompey were able to raise their image with their previous victories in the Balkans, so Crassus, who was the ruler of Syria at that time, tried to try his luck by attacking the Parthians. He crossed the Euphrates River in 54 BC despite the opposition of Rome and with a powerful 7-legion army, and without declaring war. Then he destroyed the bridge over the Euphrates, because stories about the Parthian cavalry and their bravery had been spread in the Roman army, and had made them afraid of the Parthians, and Crassus was afraid that his soldiers would flee. Crassus was initially successful and was crowned emperor by the army. Of course, his successes were nothing more than the looting of the villages and the homeless settlements of Meandridon. The second army sent an envoy to Crassus to ask him for an explanation about this enmity, and he proudly replied that he would answer the Parthians in Seleucia. Then the oldest envoy of the Second War, named Viges, answered, "If you see a hair in my hand, you will also visit the city of Seleucia." Thus, the war between these two superpowers was decided. In the 1st century BC, the Parthians of Iran were able to become neighbors of the Roman Empire by dominating Armenia and Asia Minor, and all the rivers up to the border of Syria, while several years ago, the government of the Roman Republic was trying to divide Armenia. Autonomy was in the outskirts of the Parthian territory. It was lost by the Parthians, and this issue continued until the end of the dynastic wars between Iran and Rome, but the Romans failed in their efforts to separate Armenia from Iran. In the west of the Iranian Empire, there were lands under the rule of the Roman Empire, all of Europe, including the Italian peninsula, Gaul, France, the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, England, the Germanic lands, and North Africa to Syria. Only for a short time, Ptolemy XII together with his sister Cleopatra ruled Egypt, and finally they were defeated by the Roman general Octavius. Therefore, two powerful empires ruled the world, one in Europe, North Africa to Syria in the name of the powerful Roman state, and the other was the Parthian Empire, which had the entire Middle East except Syria in its territory, and whose eastern borders extended to India and the land of the Kushans in the eastern part of Afghanistan. The territory of the Achaemenid era did not reach. With the conclusion of the Parthian War, the king of Parthian handed over the command of the main Iranian army of 10,000 to a brave general named Sorena, and went to Armenia himself to prevent the king of that land from sending reinforcements to Rome. When Crassus entered the border of Haran, a city in the south of present-day Turkey, and the former border of Iran and Rome, with an army of 42,000 Roman legionaries, he saw a small army of Parthians in front of him. Crassus organized the Roman army in a rectangular shape, then gave one wing to Cassius and the other to his son Publius Crassus, and took the heart of the army. The Parthians had large drums with bells tied around them to ring from several places. The collection of these sounds, like the roar of wild animals or lightning, was very terrifying and disturbed the ears from a distance, and it was very exciting and made the army man out of his normal state. Sorena's army consisted of 10,000 light and heavy cavalry. This was the first time that the Romans encountered horsemen who were armored from head to toe. Knowing that the well-equipped Roman army could not be easily defeated, Sorena resorted to a war trick. He appeared before the Roman army with 1,000 soldiers and hid 9,000 archers behind the hills. As the legionaries attacked, Sorena ordered a retreat so that the Roman soldiers could pursue them into the Parthian compound. At this time, the archers came out from behind the hills and attacked the Romans. The Parthian horsemen, with zigzag movement, threw arrows at the infantry legionaries so skillfully that, according to Plutarch, they pinned the feet of the Roman soldiers to the ground. In fact, the strength of the Iranian army in this war was shooting and fighting. At this time, Publius Crassus, son of Crassus, along with 1,300 heavy horsemen, 1,000 of whom were horsemen from the land of Gaul, France, sent by Julius Caesar, rushed to help the legionaries, but they did not do anything, and finally they all closed in, or were killed. Crassus tried to organize another attack by organizing the remaining army, but was suddenly confronted with the severed head of his son on a Persian spear. After the death of Publius, Sorena attacked the Roman army with his whole army, especially the heavily armed cavalry. A fierce battle ensued that lasted until the night. When it got dark, the parties gave up on each other. Taking advantage of the darkness of the night, Crassus escaped with his remaining forces towards Kareh. Sorena pursued him at dawn, but Crassus reached the city and took refuge there. The city of Kareh, which was a Roman stronghold, was besieged by the Persians, and Sorena sent a message to the Romans that if they surrendered Crassus, he would make peace with them. The Romans refused to surrender to Crassus and forced him to flee at night. Sorena found out about his escape and started chasing him, and reached him in the middle of the road. In the conflict that occurred, Crassus was killed and only Cassius could reach Antioch with 500 horsemen. According to Roman historians, at the end of the battle, 20,000 Romans were killed and 10,000 were captured, while the number of wounded and dead Parthians did not even reach 100 people. Various traditions have been told about the death of Crassus. Some believe that he was killed on the battlefield by Sorena, but others claim that the day after the battle, Crassus was killed by the Roman commanders, who believed their defeat to be due to his imprudence. According to another story, the day after the battle, Crassus was killed by Pomoxer, one of Sorena's companions, while fleeing with some of his companions, and his head and hands were joined to his son's head, and at the end of the war in the Armenian palace, where at the time, Artbaz was the ruler of Armenia and was hanged. But Sorena published in Seleucia that he had captured Crassus alive, because he wanted to include a mocking scene as a victory and mockery of the Romans. Therefore, he dressed one of the captives named Caius Pastianus, who was very similar to Crassus, in women's clothes and taught him to respond when called by Crassus or general and commander. So they put him on a horse and a number of women's drums, and women's drums set off ahead of him. Officers riding on camels were placed around him, and before riding, they moved the whip and axe, that were the symbols of the Roman consulate. Round each group of Seleucid women, dancing and singing, mockingly described the war of Crassus and his female morals and lack of courage. 5. The 7 eagles, the symbol of the defeated legions, were entrusted to the temple of Anaita of Tisphon, at the request of Sorena. 6. However, the death of Crassus and the heavy defeat of the Roman army caused an irreparable blow to the Roman government, and made the Parthians, famous in the world. In this battle, the flag of the legions of the Roman army fell into the hands of the Iranians, and until peace was established between the Iranian and Roman empires, this flag was kept in the Parthian king's court. According to some reports, the head of Crassus was sent to Ard-II. After the Battle of Haran, he decided to conquer Roman Syria, and fought with Gaius Cassius Longinus, who had returned the remnants of the Roman army there. Here the Romans acted in the style of the Parthians, and narrowly defeated the Iranian army. After that, a long truce was established between Iran and Rome. Again, in 39 BC, Urfan sent his son Paker with Ziyad troops and Labanus, a Roman general, who was in the service of the Shah of Iran, to conquer Syria. At first, he was successful, but when Publius Ventidius Bassus arrived in Syria, he became a beneficiary of the Romans. The explanation is that Paker was killed in this war, and Ord gave up on conquering Syria, and then because of the death of his son, he became disgusted with the kingdom and left it to his eldest son Farad IV. Capturing all the Roman flags, eagles of the Roman army, was a disgrace that sat on the lap of the Roman army after this war. After this defeat, Julius Caesar, the great Roman general, wanted to take revenge for this defeat from the Iranians, but before preparing to attack Iran on March the 15th, 44 AD, he was killed inside the Roman Senate with the dagger of Marcus Junius Brutus, and the swords of his enemies. Cassius, the surviving general of the battle with the Parthians, who managed to reach Syria, was one of Caesar's killers, because it clearly witnessed the weakness of the consular power, and also the lack of foresight of this power. Finally, during the reign of Parthian Farad IV, peace was established between Iran and Rome during the reign of Octavius, in 20 BC, and Farad IV agreed to return all Roman vexilliums, Roman shields, to Rome. Instead, Octavius gave Farad IV an Italian concubine named Timuza, who married her and gave birth to Farad V. After the victory of the Parthians over the Romans, the world of that day came to the conclusion that the Roman terror can be defeated, and the Romans, like other nations, sometimes win and sometimes lose. The Battle of Haran created a new style and transformation in the imagination of writers, poets, historians and moral philosophers in Rome. These writings doubled the fear of the invincible party. The bitter event that happened to Iran after this war was that Sorena was killed when he was young and after doing such great service. Roman historians have written that Urfan killed such a hero out of suspicion, fear and envy, and deprived Iran of the service of such a general. Haran and Marathon. Haran War is very important in the history of Iran. This was the first confrontation between Iranians and Romans. The Romans were conquerors everywhere until this time, and this defeat cast a shadow on their power, and made the name of Parth great in the world. The Battle of Haran is like the Battle of Marathon, as at that time the great Achaemenid state, in its movement towards the west for the first time, encountered the strong Greek wall, and its expansion was stopped. From now on, its spread in Asia ended.